More than 25,000 parents and students have signed a petition against New South Wales's coronavirus ban on Year 12 school formals and graduations. Students now face even stricter COVID rules as they head into Term 3 as the government rules out formals, dances, graduations and some music classes. Meanwhile, future teachers could find it harder to obtain an education in New South Wales under new laws to raise university requirements and improve teacher quality. I caught up with the state's Education Minister, Sarah Mitchell, just a short time ago.
So this really builds on work that we've already been doing as a government. We recently brought in last year what we call our Teacher Success Profile, and it's about making sure that any student who graduates from university and who wants to work in a government school has to get a credit average, has to have all their pracs assessed and also has to have an interview. So this committee recommendation that the Upper House in New South Wales has come up with that also talks about lifting standards in teaching, it very much aligns with government policy already, and I think it's good to see the committee process confirm that we need to make sure we have really high quality teachers coming into our education system in New South Wales.
Has there been a perception, Minister, that maybe standards, certainly the quality of academic standards, have slipped with teachers in recent years?
Well, I think it's part of, all of the education policy areas of reform that we're working on. I mean, obviously that initial teacher education, making sure we're working really closely with our universities so that we have the best and brightest teachers standing in our classrooms. We know that the quality of the teacher in the classroom has the most impact on the educational outcomes of students. So, as I said, I think it aligns very well with the direction that we're already starting to take as a government. Couple that with the work we're doing around our curriculum reform, decluttering, really focusing on literacy and numeracy, particularly in the early years. I think it all blends together to show some of the changes that we want to make in education to ensure that we're having the best outcomes for our students, because ultimately that's what this is all about, having our students leave school with the best possible ability of going on to further study or getting a job.
Now, formals and graduations are on hold during COVID, but there's a petition, 25,000 signatures, to bring them back. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, Lisa, can I say for the Year 12 students, my heart really goes out to them. I really feel for the year that they've had, and I know it's been tough. And certainly having to say to them for Term 3, which we're about halfway through, that we can't have any graduations or ceremonies at this point in time. It's sad, and I understand why they're disappointed about it. What I will say, though, is these are the guidelines that we are following from health. They will be in place for Term 3, but we will look at what options there might be available for Term 4. I know that many schools are looking at virtual graduations and assemblies so that parents can live stream those activities. And certainly after the HSC exams, if there's opportunities to work with health around what we might be able to do, I'm certainly very open to that. But we need to make sure we manage the risk. We are still living with a pandemic. I don't want there to be a formal or a school event for Year 12 students before the HSC that disrupts exams or indeed means that some students can't sit their exams if they've got to be in isolation. We just have to take the proper precautions based on health advice, but there might be opportunities to look at some other things that we can do later in the year. And as I said, certainly as Minister, I'm very open to seeing if that's something that we can do.
There's a bit of speculation about the future of schoolies. Of course, a rite of passage for Year 12 students each year. Invariably, they head to the Gold Coast. There's been no decision made as yet as to whether or not schoolies will proceed or not. There is a strong school of thought, though, that maybe 2020 it might have to be delayed or postponed or even abandoned. Do you have a view?
I mean, ultimately, I guess what they want to do up on the Gold Coast falls to the Queensland government to make those decisions. I think for a lot of our school leavers, again, I know it's something that they look forward to, but I think we've got to take the health advice in line here as well. And for those who want to go and celebrate, if there's ways that they can do that for our New South Wales students within New South Wales and still follow the COVID-safe rules, then I'm sure students will be making plans along those lines. But look, it's a tough year and you're living with a pandemic and sometimes that there have been some challenges and this may be one of them.
Now, look, I love music, nothing better than going along to a great concert, but I wasn't a huge fan at school, and yet there's a debate at the moment about music in schools. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, well, again, this is about the updated health advice that we've had come through. So we can't have choirs at the moment or chanting groups just because of those health concerns around the aerosols and droplets that can come out when people are singing. And certainly for some of the wind instruments, there are concerns around that, again, based on health advice. But individual performances and some band activities within the COVID guidelines can take place. And we're just saying to our schools, you need to take the advice that we're giving you, follow the guidelines. And I think music is a really important part of education, and I know that a lot of students really value taking those music classes while they're at school. But again, it is a bit of a different year. We've got to follow the health advice, and our number one priority has to be keeping our students and staff safe, even if that does lead to some disappointments in certain subject areas.
And just finally, Minister, there's a push by independent schools to make face masks mandatory. Do you think they have a point?
Well, we've been pretty open with our school communities about face masks and said while health aren't requiring them, there's absolutely no issue if any students or staff wish to wear masks. And I know that some do, and many do, particularly travelling to and from school when they're out in the community. So the health advice remains that they're not required at school, but there's no harm in students and staff wearing them, and that will continue to be our position unless health advises us otherwise.